feel like I am who I am because of Alaska and Bristol Bay and salmon.
I walk into the village and there's this little kid, it's a little native Eskimo. He said, that polar bear was going to eat you.
Женя, ты по доброй воле уехала дальше, чем в России самых закоренелых преступников посылали.
I love it here, but I'm not sure that Alaska loves me back.
Some people move to Alaska because there's no other place in the world left like it. And that's like walking back in time.
Blues, jazz, maybe a little bit of acid rock. You got cigarettes?
You got any money? You got something to trade? I don't give cigarettes away anymore.
I got $1.
Okay, you're on.
You're awesome.
I'm Eagle. I'm Lakota.
It's good to meet you.
Very nice to meet you. Enjoy the cigarette.
Pet cemetery. So I have 5 horses, 2 of my very favorite cows. Decided they were too nice to eat them. And 3 dogs, 1 goose. Someday I want to have my little spot in here as well, among my little buddies. Hi, I'm Mossi Kilcher. I live in Homer, Alaska, on my beautiful seaside farm. I make music, I'm an artist, I'm a nature lover, and a farmer, and a habitat creator.
Up in the wild Northland.
I've lived in Homer over 75 years. I was born and raised in Alaska, and I grew up in a little log cabin out in the wilderness with my 7 brothers and sisters all together in a little log cabin. It had a sod roof. My father built it out of logs from the forest there. And we lived, you know, off the land. We had gardens, we fished salmon, and we hunted moose and bears and regular, you know, Alaska growing up. This is the old family wagon with the horses in front. And I remember when I was a little kid, we went around in this thing. And my parents came from Switzerland. They were settlers. They came during World War II. And they really wanted to start a whole new life in Alaska and raise their kids in nature. Hello, guys. And my mother also homeschooled us till I was old enough to go to school, which was when I was 13. But then I learned about being in nature and how many beautiful animals and creatures are out there all having their own life too, not just people. And so I started getting a little bit of the opposite of my father, you know, especially my father, because he was a typical pioneer. He cut trees and built houses and clear the land, you know, even if little birds are living in it. He didn't know. But of course I knew, so we had lots of fights about it. And so more and more over the years, I became more on the side of nature. And I realized you can live on the land without disturbing it too many things. You can live side by side. You can live in harmony with it. Because the animals live in harmony with each other, so why cannot people? Hüsli means little house in Swiss. Hüsli means little house. You can get through the world without dominating or being superior to anybody. That equality extends to all life, not just all humans, but to all life forms. I'm equal to the raspberry, I'm equal to the horse and the cow. We all have a life. And until you really honor that, you cannot be just toward humans either. So this equal sideways thinking instead of top-down thinking is what I think is going to make a difference in it. This, in a way, is all wild, useless land by people standards, but by animal standards, by bird standards, it's like Central Park. It's like Santa Barbara. Fantastic riding horse. All these things I figured out over my life when I got my own farm. I tried to keep this place, one piece as much as possible. I can run a chainsaw, I can build a house, I can work land, learn how to cut trees down, how to catch fish, everything. And I grew up thinking that was perfectly normal. But it was in a time when the culture around still says women cannot do certain things. Help yourself. Once I'm in here, I'm stuck. I can't leave. Look at all these beautiful berries. I love the berries, and I think the berries love me. Wow, look at those raspberries. It's beautiful. Wow. Could you help pick?
Oh, yeah. This one's helpful. That one's not very efficient.
That one was eating them, I think.
I can see it was
eaten some before when we were picking them. He likes raspberries a lot.
When I was in my 20s, me and my sister, we wanted to work on a fishing boat. It seemed an exciting life. No way, women are not allowed on boats. Okay. So then we said, let's buy our own boat. Come on, we can work, make money. And they wouldn't even let us do that. It's like, can you imagine? Now women on boats all the time. Women captains, women crew. I mean, you can't even hardly imagine such a time, right? It's taken me a whole lifetime to learn this, especially from culture I grew up in, where women couldn't even say boo without the man's permission. So it took me many years from the 1940s, if you can imagine, till now to come to realize, hey, it's okay. Take care of yourself, do what you believe in. Life is too short. Believe me, I want to live another 100 years at least.
Let me be running free. Give me one more chance, oh please. Let me run in peace. High above the stormy gales, I can hear the singing of the whale.
I started making music when I was just a little girl, making up little songs. And my father played the flute, my mother the violin. It seemed normal and natural to sing, and sing loud. You're in the open, you just sing at the top of your lungs. So later I got a guitar when I was older, and I started making up songs. And when people are not singing, I'm thinking, what's wrong with them? They should sing. Birds sing. It's a good way to just express yourself, but also connect with other people. Music connects, I think, like nothing else. I've been writing songs all my life. I just made this one album when I was in my 30s. I was married and had kids, and I really wanted to preserve some of my songs, and I was excited. I thought, oh wow, maybe I can make a record. Kind of like people write a book, just to preserve, not to become rich or famous. I knew I could never get on a stage and travel around. I didn't want to. I just wanted to do my own thing with my own songs, my own way. And whatever happened after, I sold something just here and there, but I never really thought about where it would take me or anything. I just wanted to express something, especially about nature, how it made me feel over the years. The most important thing that I would suggest to younger people especially, don't waste time doing things you don't love. And if you're doing something you don't love, find a way to make it fun. At the very least, you can do this with imagination. I had to learn to do this as a child because I worked very, very hard all the time as a little girl. You know how kids are, they're jumping around screaming all the time? So that part inside should never die. If that goes away, you should really start wondering I'm not doing something right. I think nature is my biggest constant inspiration, my grounding, my roots, my big home. We're so connected with it. You don't even realize how we connected are with nature.
I sit where the sun shines in a ferny circle and fly away on
Я люблю истории рассказывать. Я некоторое время работала, помогала воспитательнице. Там такие сильные ветра, действительно, на Аляске называется колыбелью ветра, что когда мы наших первоклассников, детский сад, получается, отпускали гулять, им в карманы пальто клали камешки, чтобы их ветер не унес. А заодно клали записку с обратным адресом, на случай, если унесет, на 2 языках, на английском и на русском, потому что неизвестно, в какую сторону ветер подует.
Вы серьезно сейчас?
Вот я и говорю, что почему-то у людей все-таки есть тенденция хотя бы на секунду мне поверить. Меня зовут Евгения Анищенко. Я живу в городе Анкоридже, Аляска. Занимаюсь разным. Работаю на службу парков. По образованию археолог, историк, антрополог.
Смотрите вы на меня.
Давайте еще раз повторим, да. То есть...
Почему я сюда приехала? Я замуж вышла. И у нас были варианты попробовать жить в России. Мы познакомились в Будапеште, поженились в Праге. То есть у нас такая европейская была история. Но в России очень тяжело на самом деле получить визу на работу. И вообще как-то на место жительства устроиться. Поэтому мы перебрались в Америку. Так получилось, что я как-то стала работать очень много с музеями. И, кстати, с музейными проектами, которые связывают и Россию, и Аляску, потому что самые первые коллекции, собранные этнографические на Аляске, они, в общем-то, были собраны русскими и осели в разных русских хранилищах. Очень много в Москве и в Петербурге, конечно, поэтому вот эти связи, они как-то в моей профессиональной жизни, они сыграли большую роль. Так что мы перебрались в Анкоридж. Когда я приехала на Аляску и сообщила об этом с большой, между прочим, радостью своим родителям, они мне сказали: Женя, ты по доброй воле уехала дальше, чем в России самых закоренелых преступников посылали.
Примерно миля до водопада.
Yeah, he's dirty.
She's tiny. She's baby. How old is she?
He's 11 weeks.
Kyla.
Yeah, he's really dirty from the mud.
Около Ситки, около мыса Ячком, находится кораблекрушение корабля «Нева», которое в России, мне кажется, довольно известно. Это первое кругосветное путешествие русское. И получается, уже 5 лет назад мы снарядили экспедицию по поиску этого кораблекрушения и работали там 2 сезона. Спустя, опять же, наверное, получается полгода после этого проекта поехала в Ситку работать сначала директором морского общества, а потом куратором в местном историческом обществе. Так что как-то так получается, что русские сюжеты, они и русские корабли, они определяют траекторию моего движения. И много замечательных мест, очень много красивых мест. Но такого чувства свободы, наверное, нет нигде. И она такая свобода, как свободе полагается быть с ответственностью, да? То есть можно почувствовать себя очень свободным человеком на высокой горе, но при этом на тебе лежит ответственность с нее не упасть. У меня есть такая мысль, она, наверное, сильно была бы популярна, особенно среди коренного населения. Но, в принципе, если посмотреть на историю Аляски, то до появления русских у этой территории не было не только единого топонима, не было единой идентификации. Нет, мухоморчик. Пусть растет. Я тут долго думала, кто ж ест грибы, кроме меня, в смысле, кроме людей. Выяснилось, что слизни хорошо их едят, всякие жуки, естественно. Когда меня спрашивают о том, в чем состоит позитивное влияние русских на Аляске, мне в голову приходит именно это. То есть то, что мы в этой огромной, собственно говоря, в огромном штате, в огромной стране говорим о какой-то общности, да, что мы, все люди, которые тут живут, мы считаем себя аляскинцами. Это на самом деле исторически влияние русских, влияние русского присутствия. Но на Аляске там был дополнительный драматический момент. Тяжело говорить о какой-то невинности русских первопроходцев, потому что к тому времени, когда русские дошли до Аляски, они уже пробежали всю Сибирь и, в принципе, с традиционными народами сталкивались много. И мне кажется, отчасти их успех на Аляске был связан с этим опытом. Это не значит, что этот успех был позитивен для местного народа. Он был очень негативен. Этот успех был для русских эксплуататоров, для русских первопроходцев. Но для местных народов это было уничтожение вековых структур. Одна из клинкитских, старейшин и таких очень влиятельных женщин хорошо, мне кажется, на эту тему высказалась. Она сказала, нам важно знать, что если бы не было русского и европейского завоевания, у нас бы все равно было электричество. Мы бы все равно ездили на машинах, мы бы были образованными людьми, мы бы были успешными. Мне кажется, тенденция считать, что все эти завоевательские, вся эта колонизация – это плохо, но это необходимо для цивилизации. Вот в это я не верю. Просто цивилизация была бы другой.
Don't smile. Lily, don't smile. Let's do that one more time. But Lily, don't smile. It's a challenge.
Lily is as soon as she sees the camera, she starts to
strike a pose.
We lost a lot of our culture and language because the kids weren't allowed to speak the language and weren't allowed to practice the culture. My name is David Jensen. I'm Tlingit from Kloak. My Tlingit name is Anki, and I'm a speaker for the Dog Salmon clan, which means I'm the chief, and I get to speak for my family. Just more air, more. Yeah. Tlingit. Yeah.
Am I doing good? Tlingit.
Yeah,
I should practice.
And there's people working to preserve the language and the culture, and we're just trying to learn what we can and teach what we can. So you had to be in the higher caste to be a chief. Basically, the chief's job is to lead the family. Sometimes there's a death in the family or just discussions about clan property, or regalia, or atu, as they call it in the Tlingit way, obligations, and taking care of the families. My name came from my mother's side of the family. There's dog salmon people all over the world. The dog salmon clan is probably one of the biggest as far as numbers. My grandfather's clan was just about, we thought he was one of the last ones of the clan, but we found some other family members. And it was nice to know that there were still some of his people left. So many tribes that have been wiped out over the last century or two, just disease and wars and just attrition. It was good to find some of his relatives still living. In our culture, there's two halves of the nation. One is the eagles, all the eagle clans, and the other half is the raven clans. Anytime the ravens do something, the eagles should be there to support that or to provide a response.
So the art on the pole is not as refined and experienced as the art on other more traditional poles. They're copies done by people who could do a little painting and a little art, but they didn't have any affinity for the art form.
This style house is after European influence. So before this, we had huts, pretty much just really primitive, probably a lot like there is in, the ancient shelters in Siberia or someplace like that. Just the entry there is designed so when you walk through the entry, you're vulnerable. So if you're under attack, whoever comes through, you can knock them over the head. We took the whole the whole building apart and built a new foundation, then put it back together. All of these are called the sill beams. They're the lower beams, and then the roof beams, and all the major components are different. I've always liked building things. Got to do some pretty major projects, clan houses and 40-foot dugout canoes and totem poles, and made a lot of my own tools, and it's just interesting, and sometimes you can even make money at it. Growing up Tlingit and not really understanding what that really meant, because there was a transition when the Europeans came. We were truly Tlingit. We lived the Tlingit way. And then the missionaries came, and some of the missionaries would teach us how to be like them and told us not to speak our language. There's some good with the bad.
Lily is a salmon. She's a raven dog salmon. So this has a salmon which is appropriate for her. And these are called button blankets for the obvious reason they have a lot of buttons. Even though they're very traditional, button blankets didn't come about until after meeting with white men, because of the buttons were European and the felt was European. But they took it and they made it their own.
There's family members like my granddaughter. Her father came and got her and took her across the country, and she was going to be adopted out, and we found out and decided that we should raise her as our own, and partly because she needs to know who her family is and who her people are, and through that we've been able to share the culture with her, and she's really interested. She loves her family and her people, and it's just another way to connect with them, and it just helps to build that bond with the kids, if they understand. They don't have to know everything. They just need to understand that they're a part of this.
Church's chocolate, whipped cream, almond nuts и, говорю по-русски плохо получается, и малина с моего сада. Но это американский десерт. Cream puffs, whipped cream, cherry chocolate, nuts all together. And my love. Just enjoy. Доброго здоровья всем. Меня зовут Нина Константиновна Фефелова. Нахожусь я в русской деревне Николаевск на Аляске. Небольшое у меня здесь кафе, который приезжает со всех уголков мира люди. Что, здесь правильно? Славненько. Теперь без сарафана и в рубашке. Снимай кафтан. Так, говорят, улыбнуться надо. Сейчас серьезно. Вот такая я противная у тебя. Жить здесь очень хорошо в деревне, свежий воздух. А иван-чай какой, везде цветет, такая же красота. И он очень полезный, я с него и хлеб пеку, и с одуванчика пеку, и с турмериком пеку. Борщ. Сверху немножко чеснока, немножко укропа. Ой, я забыла лук. Я сейчас им же лук положу. Так как в борще не будет сметаны, то я им положила вегинес. Кафе появилось не просто так. Многие приезжали, не знали, что делать. Где пирожки, где борщ, ничего нет. Взяла матрешки, вышивки, платьишки, все поставила у себя в квартире на 2-м этаже. Стой туда, иди дальше. Вот так, теперь одну вот так делаем. Все, теперь могу точно сказать, мы получим фотки. Приехала я сюда в 1991 году. Меня батюшка пригласил. Меня пригласил как гостью.
И я когда приехала, он спросил у меня про церковь. Я, говорит, слышал, что ты председатель. Я говорю, да, я сама с Хабаровска. И когда сюда приехала, отец Кондрат спросил меня, все узнал и сказал мне, что да, будем строить церковь. Неожиданно для меня его сын предложил мне выйти за него замуж. Люди должны знать о старообрядцах. Мы с тобой, для того Бог меня сюда послал с Хабаровска, чтобы я тебя здесь вот так немножко гоняла. Чтобы ты попел, да почитал, да рассказал. У него было 3 детишек. Я бы, конечно, не хотела бы, чтобы быть мачехой, но ничего, видно, у каждого своя судьба. Ну, так уж получилось. И вот у нас так вот, что я осталась здесь. Я читаю, я пою в церкви. Я с мужем стою на крылосе. Такого счастья я не представляла, что у меня будет верующий человек, я буду стоять с ним и молиться. Он очень болен, но Господь его крепит.
Рыбачил я, сейчас не стал рыбачить. Артрит меня касает, все покосил кости.
Но у нас в нашей деревне поповцы и беспоповцы. Ну, люди, которые не знают, я просто хочу сказать, поповцы – это у кого есть поп, у кого есть священник. Беспоповцы, они с настоятелем. Церковнославянский язык у нас продолжается, чтение, пение у нас на церковнославянском. Иногда батюшка Евангелие читает на английском, а каждую службу он переводит на английский язык Евангелие для тех, кто был в церкви, потому что уже у нас не разговаривают по-русски. Это очень печально. То, что потерян язык, это очень печально. Но дети, которые говорят на английском, они читают на церковнославянском, они поют на церковнославянском. Что они понимают, ничего не понимают. Обидно очень, но ничего не поделаешь. Все эти книги написаны на церковнославянском языке. Население у нас уменьшилось намного. Было 550 человек, а сейчас 350 человек. 10% американцев у нас в деревне.
А 10% американцев, вы имеете в виду, кто
они
приехал сюда?
Приехали, купили дома, купили землю, да. Очень им нравится здесь. И когда у нас свадьбы, похороны, все в деревне как в одной семье.
В обычное время в службе нам должны пойти звонить. А это вот било деревянное. Молитву «Помилуй Боже» читаешь и стучишь.
Я преподавала в школе 12 лет русский язык с 3 по 12 класс. Ну, сделали мы теремок, репка, курочка ряба, делали представление на выпуск школы. Конечно, было трудно. Песни русские пели. Американцев очень интересовало это. К нам детишки с соседней школы ездили и учили русский язык. Сильно уж родители хотели, чтобы они знали. Кондратич, ты где? Боже, милостив будь у меня грешных, здравыми, Господи, и помилуй меня. Это кладбище наше, Поповское. Я люблю Аляску. Ой, люблю за Иван-чай. Я не могу сказать. И можно лицо кубиками помыть. Можно выпить его. Я целый день могу не кушать, я только Иван-чай. Попила, витамины все в тебе. Вот и все. Это здорово. Рыба. Это тоже. А когда лосем угостят, ой, вообще, лосиное мясо очень хорошо.
And you peel it off, and then you eat it. It's as simple as that. And it's amazing.
And I can't wait for you to try it, so you can be amazed too. My name is Melanie Anastasia Brown. My Yupik name is Taikupa. I am here sitting on Tlingit Ani, the lands of the Akwan and Takuquan people, place that is known as Juneau, Alaska. I commercial fish for salmon in Bristol Bay, where my family is from, and when I'm not commercial fishing for sockeye salmon, I advocate for salmon and their habitat. I feel like my commercial fishing work and my advocacy work, they're really well integrated with each other actually. People might think it's counterintuitive because commercial fishing is viewed as something that depletes the environment, depletes fish populations. I started fishing with my family, commercial fishing in Bristol Bay in the Naknek River District, where my mother is from, when I was 10 years old, because that was the age that she started fishing at. She started fishing with her grandfather, Paul Chacon. He started fishing in the 1920s, not long after the Spanish influenza pandemic that swept through Bristol Bay, and it ended up decimating the adult population, unfortunately. My children are involved in the operation now too, so they represent the 5th generation of commercial fishers. Oh, my brother-in-law, he's so great about sending me food. I'm so happy. So this is sockeye. What he does so that it fits in the sleeve, this preservation sleeve, is he kind of scores it and then folds it in half. I started doing wild salmon advocacy. There's a bear down there. There's a bear. Do you see it?
Yes, I do.
It's so beautiful.
No, you just passed.
What led me to my salmon advocacy was the threat of the proposed pebble mine. It is the pebble deposit. It sits at the headwaters of the two most prolific salmon rivers in Bristol Bay, the headwaters of the Nushagak and the Kwijak rivers. Then the more I learned about, how it would harm habitat, how much waste would be left behind in the form of tailings, that's when I realized that, oh my gosh, I need to get involved. I think that was maybe one of my first volunteer efforts, was helping out at the Alaska State Fair and talking to people and making sure that they were aware of this threat to wild salmon, because wild salmon are so important to Alaskans. Alaska became a state because of wild salmon. It was a means to ban fish traps that were just completely choking off salmon rivers and decimating runs. And fortunately, the people who wrote our Constitution, they wrote things in about salmon, and it got rid of those fish traps. Eventually it became my work. It hasn't changed how I do my fishing, but it has changed how connected I am to the fishing community, and it's changed it in a really wonderful way. We have to find ways to come together to keep this terrible thing from happening. How many sets does it usually take for you to get that many fish?
That many? Oh, it totally depends. If it's really slow. Like our last day, we had a pull for 40 fish.
There's also the personal use fishery. It provides non-natives opportunities to set out small pieces of gear on the beach so that they can take fish for their own personal use. For the indigenous populations, there's this term called subsistence. It's not a very edifying definition for the indigenous people and their way of life and how they view salmon, because it almost sounds subservient. But it is something that is allowed, and for indigenous people who don't participate in the commercial fishery, they have every opportunity to provide for their families and for food for the winter.
I've been fishing a long time. This place more better because there's a lot of fish that come here. We could catch fish and then eat.
You know, one of the stereotypes of Alaska is there's not a lot of women in Alaska. I was single, and I looked at the map, and it showed Juneau as the capital, and I thought, there's got to be some women there, right? And that's really, that's how I ended up in Juneau. But I love it. It was the best decision ever. My name's Nollan Дэвис. I live in Juneau, Alaska. I'm a dentist that flies around rural communities and provides health care. I was born and raised in western North Carolina, so that's in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. I know I wrote my 4th grade book report, so maybe I was 9 years old, on Alaska. So it started as a young age, reading Jack London books, and then into college, John Muir, I think was probably a pretty great influence on my fascination with Alaska. You know, like most people, we're all drawn to this vast wilderness. And I found myself up here right after school. I packed my Husky into a car and drove across country and slept in my car for a few months until I got a place to live. And I've been here for 16 years since then. The whole float, if it wasn't compartmentalized, it would fill up with water. And that's a lot of weight. You couldn't take off or it would be dangerous. And so I started thinking about dentistry in high school, and I found out that I like building things and thinking through projects and solving problems and having instant gratification. I can get a patient out of pain quickly. They appreciate that. I value that. I can give somebody their smile back, you know, which can be life-changing. I'd always thought I wanted to get my pilot's license. Me and my assistant, we were standing on the runway, one of the most dangerous airports in Alaska, and our plane never showed up, and found out that the engine quit and had to make an emergency landing. And it was really that moment when I just decided, I don't like that absence of control. I want to be flying myself. As far as me flying myself to villages, I go to the local ones, the closest ones, and right now I service Yakutat and Pelican and Skagway. Practice needs 3,000 or so people. Those local villages do not have a dentist out there. The population isn't large enough to support one, so I am the dentist for those villages. 2 weeks a year I fly out to Pelican. I have to use the float plane because they don't have a runway. I usually stay in each village for a week at a time. In Gamble, on St. Lawrence Island, right next to Russia, I was in my big puffy parka, you know, fur, big boots. I walk into the village and there's this little kid, it's a little native Eskimo, and he's wearing a t-shirt, and I'm wearing this big parka and fur, and he says, "Who are you?" I said, "Oh, I'm the dentist." He said, "That polar bear was going to eat you." I was like, "Okay, whatever, kid." I never saw it, I never heard it. I don't know what they were talking about. The next day with a rifle, we actually went seal hunting. I wanted to see how they lived. Followed my tracks, and then there was these polar bear tracks, these huge bear prints right on mine, and just chilled me to the bone. and I've stayed in people's houses. I've slept on the clinic floor, slept on cots, slept in the ambulance garage, slept in the drunk tank, which is a holding cell for inebriated residents. I've got a great little spot that overlooks the lake that I've got the float plane on, and it's got a tremendous view of the Mendenhall Towers, these beautiful rock outcroppings we like to go climb on. And I couldn't see me living anywhere else.
Females do a little dance. It's just like us on a dance floor. Kind of lift up on their sides and shake like this. And the boys go, ah, ah. And they fight their way in there and they release themselves. So it's all this wild sex party going on right now. And they're making love. My name is Ray Troll. I'm going to start with that. I live here in Ketchikan, Alaska. I moved here in 1983, and and we are sitting in the Soho Coho, which is a gallery that my wife operates. I actually don't get paid to be here, so I'm just volunteering here, but it features mostly my artwork here in the gallery, but we have a number of other artists in the shop as well. I came to Alaska because I didn't have anything else going on at the time. I was fresh out of graduate school. I have 2 art degrees, so I came here to be a highly educated fishmonger. And one thing led to another. Think about my mama, think about you. I got those Sarcopterygian, Devonian blues. Ketchikan has more of a reputation for being more of a rough and tumble kind of place. But of course, it's always had a reputation for being a great center for native arts. It was once condemned as the wickedest city. And we were sitting right in the very heart of the wicked part. This is an old house of prostitution. And the old joke is that this is the place where both men and salmon head upstream to spawn. This is called the married man's trail. That means you sneak to the whorehouse if you're married, so your wife doesn't know. This is where the magic happens. I fell into this artistic life at the age of 4 when I picked up a crayon and I drew. And what did I draw? I drew dinosaurs. And I'm still drawing dinosaurs with crayons. I draw a lot of fish too, but so I never progressed, I never matured. You are looking at a 5-year-old trapped inside the body of a 66-year-old man. She's mine, no, she's mine, she's mine. We all find our childhood superpower. If you're good with something as a kid, it's your childhood superpower. So that was my childhood superpower. It's how I actually garnered favors, and I learned that I was good at it. I was selling fish, but I wanted to live as an artist. I wanted people to be able to look at a piece of art that I'd done and know that it was mine, right? So you have a distinctive style. Now, I think people could look and go, oh, that's a troll. And they just see it.
You're Ray.
Hey there. I'm Ray, yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's why I wake up in the morning and go, wow. So now you see them on t-shirts mostly, you know. I was trained as a printmaker. I realized that t-shirts are kind of a tribal thing. People buy t-shirts because they, just like with rock and roll or music, they identify with it. That's me. But another thing about t-shirts and all that is that I do think that art should be for everyone. I do think that art should not just be for the wealthy. I like that you can come into my shop and get art for 20 bucks. You know, when we established this gallery, I didn't want it just to be me by any means. I wanted to reflect the community. What has been very interesting about
being in this community is that we are intermixed with a culture that has been on this coast for 10,000 plus years. And, you know, I feel tremendously lucky to be in a town that's got these magnificent sculptures of powerful, almost magical animals. And I think the Tlingit, Haida, Tsimshian, Native American artists, and just as artists, you know, we create these images that, you know, can speak to people. And you see a bear, but when you see a powerful carving of a bear, when you see a raven, and then you see a gigantic raven carved in a beautiful fashion, then you've transformed it. That art now really speaks to us as humans. So, ooh, that was a good riff.
One fish, two fish, dead fish, blue. I wish you was a ratfish too.
There are maybe a couple kinds of people that live in Alaska, those of us who come to Alaska, then there's those who are born in Alaska. The native perspective is very different because they're born here and they have a deep, deep heritage here. And then there's people who move here. And some people move to Alaska because there's no other place in the world left like it. And they want to strive to protect that and hold on to it. And the last of the old growth forest, you know, ancient forests that have never been cut on the planet, ever. And that's like walking back in time.
You feel like you're in the city, but you're also in the forest. This is one of my favorite spots on our property.
So you hide here?
So whale vertebrae there, but this is the oldest thing besides me on the property is this Sitka spruce.
And then there's others who move here because there's the last of it in the world and they can exploit it and they can use it because it's the last of it, you know. I think if you have more of a global perspective and you realize how valuable that the wilderness is, just in terms of the relief it gives your spirit to know that, you know, we haven't fucked everything up. So I'm sorry about that. Are we back on?
Yeah, so yeah.
That's what Alaska means to me. I guess it's, yeah. No, I've said a lot of crazy heavy stuff there, so I don't know. It's maybe too over the top. It's bombastic, ridiculous.
aka Kitty Wake. We're at my studio, my home in Anchorage, Alaska. I grew up here in Anchorage specifically. I wasn't born here, but I may as well have been. My parents moved here when I was like 1.5 years old. So my earliest memories are of Anchorage and of Alaska. And I lived here all the way through high school up until I graduated. When I was 18, I left and went down to lower 48 and kind of was like bouncing back and forth between different places down there. Growing up here, you know, that we kind of like fetishize other places a little bit. We feel so like different up here. And when I finally came back to Alaska, it was really cool because I got to really appreciate it for the first time. Because growing up here, I was just always fantasizing about getting out. There's just a really big military presence here. It's a very conservative state. I still find it really hard to feel accepted here. I feel a lot of rejection within my community here. There are all these like archaic systems in place that are still just mistreating artists and wanting to take advantage of artists and basically just want us to do what we do for free. So we do fetishize people from other places so much that we just put all of our resources into like, oh, like who's this person we can bring in from somewhere else, you know, and we don't really like treat our local artists very well. I get overlooked a lot when like I see like events and things going on around town. I mean, I'm really introverted too, so that makes it really hard. I'm 32 now and I've wanted to be a musician my whole life, like wanted that, you know, more than anything, and I'm realizing that Alaska's just not the place for me to get to do that. So it's just hard. Like I, you know, have to change my idea of what success looks like. Sorry, it's just something I've been thinking a lot about lately. Because I love it here, but it's like a love-hate relationship. I'm not sure that Alaska loves me back.
Sorry, you want some water, maybe?
I got tea.
You want some?
Yeah. The taste of sunshine on the lips, a sense of helplessness in my actions. Yeah, sorry, I'm really emotional. There's actually a pretty strong LGBTQ plus community here. Both of us are queer. I mean, that's like how we navigate the world, you know? The mainstream culture is still very much conservative, and that's the prevalent culture. But once you find the queer community here, you find that it's like surprising. You know, we're a red state for sure. So I first started off as a singer, just a cappella. I actually was like pretty poor growing up. But I always loved music. And when I was 11 years old, we circumstantially ended up living with some people in Boston, Massachusetts, and they had a piano there. And they had a young daughter who was taking lessons, and I would sneak over and learn what she was learning on the piano by myself. And when we came back to Alaska, I begged my dad for piano lessons, and I started off just playing like a little like plastic Casio. I started writing music in earnest at like 13. My first song was called Fly Away, and it was about wanting to escape my home that I was living in at the time. Being young, angsty, preteen. I feel like sometimes I get into a trance, you know, with the piano, where I just get lost in whatever it is that I'm doing. I mean, it's definitely a very cathartic process for me. Round and round we go in vulnerability. I am careening fast and independent, and I have traced all of the grooves, but I keep coming back to this desire. I actually am a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for like about 2.5 years now, almost. I mean, it's become socially acceptable to, like, you know, go out and binge drink on the weekends or whatever, or like Sunday brunch, you know, or like day drinking. Like, I feel like it's been so normalized. But it's such a destructive drug for so many people, really, especially up here in Alaska. And it's also extremely prevalent within the, you know, musician and artist community. I feel there's like this story that we've carried on about like the rock star, you know, sex, drugs, rock and roll, you know, like you gotta live that lifestyle to be an artist or something. Like, I don't know, there's kind of that like weird mentality, I guess, about it. It wasn't serving me at all. It was just very self-destructive. There's been a wave of people that I've been meeting as I've been on my journey that have been on the same journey right around the same time. It's been really awesome, actually, because I feel like 10 years ago it definitely wasn't like that, but now I can generally find another sober person at any event that I like. At least there's more than one of us now, you know?
I'm sure we'll see each other if you're going to be around a while. This is the neighborhood. A few blocks that way, towards cars and all that.
Okay, you're always here.
Yeah.
The household that I came from was an alcoholic household, and like I feel like my story is all too common. I feel like it's especially prevalent up here. And then, of course, like alcohol has just wreaked havoc on native populations who, you know, like their bodies just aren't meant to metabolize it. It's just really, really depressing to see it in the streets of Alaska. It's just really sad because it is a lot of native people that you see, unfortunately. People of color, of course. When I play music, I'm like channeling all of this, you know, stuff that I don't really deal with otherwise. So my music is pretty intense. Round and round we go in vulnerability. I am careening fast and independent, and I have traced all of the grooves, but I keep coming back to this
Аляска для меня и многие любимые места на Аляске для меня они связаны именно с этим чувством свободы, чувством отсутствия ограничений. И мне кажется, может быть, другими словами, но многие аляскинцы сказали бы, наверное, то же самое.
I think sharing what you love is the most important thing in life. And for me, it has been nature and birds especially, because they've given me so much. They open my eyes to other worlds out there.
I feel like we're at this really important place in time where we really need to decide, are we going to be a state that has regenerative resources such as salmon, or are we going to sacrifice that for mineral wealth?
I think that people generally view Alaskans as being very out of touch. You'll find when you travel around Alaska, it's a huge state with a lot of different ecosystems.
When the wild salmon return to this very creek back in the very streams that they were born in, almost in the same week every year for millions of years, that's magical.
Приезжайте в гости, попьете чаю, поедите борща. Пельмени у меня очень вкусные. Но самое главное – это отдых душой.
John Muir had a quote, something about you should save Alaska until late in life because everything after that is not worth seeing. So I kind of spoiled it early, but I'll just stay here. That's fine.
I'm from Alaska. It's pride, I guess. It's just home.